Welcome back to Court TV and our live coverage of the state of Minnesota versus Derek Chauvin. There's a press conference going on outside of the Hennepin County Government Center. There you see Attorney Ben Crump. The families of both Daunte Wright and George Floyd are in attendance.
Who hails here from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Attorney Tony Romanucci. We have the honor of representing the family of Daunte Wright. Also, Attorney Storms and Romanucci and I, along with Attorney Chris Stewart and Attorney Justin Miller, have the honor of representing the family of George Floyd Jr. As you can see here, this is a bittersweet moment. It is somewhat gratifying that you have George Floyd's family who left out the courthouse where the Derek Chauvin trial regarding the death of George Floyd is currently underway because they thought it was important that they give comfort to Daunte Wright's mother and father and family, and Daunte Wright's child, Daunte Jr., and his mother, China Whitaker, because this time last year, almost a year ago, they were facing the unimaginable. They were facing the unbelievable. They were facing the agony of losing a family member to police excessive force. And it is unbelievable. I mean, it is just something I could not fathom that in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a suburb 10 miles from where the Chauvin trial regarding George Floyd was taking place, that a police officer would shoot and kill another unarmed black man. Listen. It's something that if you told me and I didn't see little Daunte's face and his grandmother crying, I wouldn't believe it. Because if ever there was a time when nobody in America should be killed by police, it was during this pinnacle trial of Derek Chauvin, which I believe is one of the most impactful civil rights police excessive use of force cases in the history of America. And we believe with everything in our heart, Katie, that police would be on their best behavior, that they would exercise the greatest standard of care, that they will concentrate on de-escalation in a way that they have never concentrated in America. But regrettably, 2 days ago, we saw Daunte Wright for a traffic citation, and Attorney Storms is going to talk about this because y'all do understand we're still in the midst of a pandemic where many people in this state could not get their license tabs on their license plates renewed because the DMV, like everything else in America, was shut down. And so it was told, police, you need to be sensitive because there are going to be a lot of expired license plates out there. But I guess when you're driving while black, people sometimes forget memos and initiatives about the realities of life. And you were here from his mother, and it's snowing, so everybody's going to try to be brief. You will hear from his mother about the phone call in the car what was said about why he was stopped, because it's evolving. It's evolving so they can justify the unjustifiable. But we're not going to let them justify it, are we? Because Dante Wright life matters. Dante Wright life matters. Dante Wright life matters. And so when you think about the fact that Dante was trying to get away, he was not a threat to them. Was it the best decision? No. But young people don't always make the best decisions. As his mother said, he was scared. And you have this 26-year veteran on the police force who was training them, Brandon, Trey. She was the trainer of the officers. And so for 26 years, you know how you're trained that your duty weapon is on your dominant side and your taser is on your non-dominant side. And why is that? Because it's foreseeable that in an exigent situation, if the taser is beside the gun, you might pull the wrong thing. But after 26 years, you would think that you know what side your gun is on and what side your taser is on. You know the weight of your gun and you know the weight of the taser. You know the gun is black. You know the taser is going to have some reflective color on it. And so it is unacceptable. It was intentional they stopped him. It was intentional they used the most force. They could have gave him a ticket. That's what they do in traffic citations. It reminds you of George Floyd. That was a misdemeanor. They could have gave him a ticket for that. But when it's black people in America, they engage in the most use of force. And it ends up with deadly consequences. And that's why we're here today. And so, without further ado, I'm going to have Attorney Jeff Storms address you briefly, and then we're going to get to Philonis and Brandon and Rodney Floyd talking about what advice they can give to this family, and then you're going to hear from this mother, father.
All right, there's Ben
and
Crump
this
addressing the
mother,
media outside the Hennepin County Government
Wright.
Center. We'll dip back in
Attorney Jeff
when
Storms.
we hear from Dante Wright's mother, who's coming up. I want to bring in my colleagues, though, get their view on what we're witnessing in the proximity. Chanley Painter is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Michael Ayala, Julie Grant also joining us. Chanley, you're there on the ground there. The Dante Wright situation is obviously, as Ben Crump talked about, it is unfathomable. That's what happened at this time, this close to this proceeding. It is absolutely having an effect on the trial. In fact, the defense wanted the jury to be sequestered.
Exactly. In a city already on edge because of the Derek Chauvin trial, now with this, I look out the window, I see more and more buildings being boarded up, Ted, as we get closer to closing arguments. And after the shooting death of Dante Wright, unrest up there in Brooklyn Center overnight for the second night. Arrests were made overnight, some looting even trickling down here in Minneapolis area. So yes, a city that is on edge. It's all over the news here. If you turn on the television, you look at a newspaper, it's the lead story. And as I told you earlier, it's inextricably intertwined with the trial. So if anyone turns it on, they see the death of Dante Wright, they're going to also see news about the Derek Chauvin trial. And we do have Court TV crews there at that press conference. We're learning that Courtney Ross, George Floyd's girlfriend, is there in support of Dante Wright's family, as well as some members, of course, that we saw of George Floyd's family. And we're also learning that the officer, Kim Potter, who shot Dante Wright, has resigned. That's the latest coming out of the news that we have here. She's resigned from the force after 26 years.
Michael and Julie, let's just get your thoughts overall on what we're witnessing. Michael first.
Ted, I'm exhausted. I mean, I'm just exhausted. I mean, these types of things are happening, and that kid is in the same position like my son. I mean, he's that age. I could absolutely see him making a poor decision because of fear under those circumstances. And I think Ben Crump is exactly right. I mean, what we have to look at, and a lot of people will look at the actions of the young man and blame him for the result of that situation. But I think it's deeper than that. What we were hoping that would come out of this trial, come out of the conversations that have been happening as a result of some of these shootings, is that there would be this understanding that there needed to be a little bit of a different approach to these situations. And you get into a situation like this one involving Daunte Wright, I think Ben Crump is right. The approach is the problem. It's almost like we need a call for a national standard on how to approach these car stops. Because again, this was a car stop for some minor violation that escalated. They're taking the kid out of the car. She's pulling out a weapon that, you know, to me, it's inexplicable that an officer of 26 years makes that mistake. It's a different weight, it's a different color, it's on a different side. So at the very least, I don't know, I'm not claiming that there's a crime that has been committed here, but certainly she should have to answer for her actions.
Yeah, I don't think that if you watch the video, in my opinion, it was a mistake. I don't think she meant to pull her service weapon. I mean, it was immediately after she discharges it, she says, blank, I think I shot him, or I did shoot him. And so that from that standpoint, I do think that she didn't intend to do it. And I think that any reasonable person that watches that video doesn't believe that this officer who has 26 years on the force, who knows that the George Floyd trial is going on, whips out her gun and shoots this young man. That's, to me, that flies in the face of any reality. I think it's a tragic mistake. I think it's a horrible mistake. And don't understand how it could happen, but I do think it's a mistake. That's just my opinion. Julie, your thoughts?
Ted, thank you. You know, first of all, I mean, my heart breaks for the Wright family. They're in my prayers now and will be as they try to come to terms with this. And you said the word that came to my mind yesterday. I mean, what a tragedy. I mean, just a tragedy. And awful mistakes sometimes unfortunately happen. And I'm sure this officer is realizing this was the biggest mistake of her life, probably, that she'll live with day in and day out, and that the Wright family is living with day in and day out. So my heart breaks for them. It is the worst news any parent could get, to learn about their son and being taken at such a young age with his whole life ahead of him. You know, that being said, as it pertains to this case, I do think it's important to note, because I know obviously our viewers are tuning in for the Chauvin trial, and this case and the implications it's having. I was really surprised this morning we didn't see defense counsel stand up and make a motion for a mistrial. Just because these jurors are well aware, with the city being on the curfew and with everything all over the news, all of the actions in the streets, it's inescapable for the men and women on this jury. And I personally felt like this jury should have been sequestered from the outset, just because it is a high-profile trial. It's a very important trial, and it matters very much to many people who are on the outside watching, and we want the jury to reach a result that is, correct under the law, under the facts and the evidence, and whatever that case may be, or whatever the findings may be. We don't want them to be influenced by outside factors that are very painful, very upsetting, or that may put them in fear in any way, shape, or form. So I really think the court needs to do some serious consideration about doing another voir dire, or considering, if the defense moves for a mistrial, considering granting that at this point and moving it out of Minneapolis.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought for sure we'd at least get this sequestration brought up again, but the defense did not bring either one. But that a mistrial would be the way you'd want to get it on record, at least, just thinking about the appeals that are coming.
Exactly, Ted.
All right, we're just upside, take a break. We'll get you back into that press conference, and so that you can hear when Daunte Wright's mother takes the podium. We'll be right back. Stay with us.